A recent study by the U.S. Fire Administration shows that 25% of firefighters who died in motor vehicle crashes were killed in privately owned vehicles. This training presentation is about you, your privately owned vehicle, or POV, and how you use it when you answer an emergency call. You've got to pay attention to this. We're losing way too many good firefighters and EMTs in motor vehicle crashes. It's a nationwide problem. In this presentation, we're going to address several issues regarding the use of privately owned vehicles. First, we need to differentiate between two classes of vehicles. The first class includes vehicles that are not owned by the emergency service organization, but are allowed to be designated as emergency vehicles, such as the vehicles owned by the fire chief or captain of the EMS company. The second class includes vehicles which are used by volunteers to drive to emergency calls and which are not designated as emergency vehicles. Now we're going to focus on this second class of vehicles. For the purposes of this training program, we'll consider this type of vehicle a POV. We'll also cover some common misuses of POVs by volunteer emergency responders. And finally, we'll discuss safety and risk control tips to help reduce the risk of crashes and injuries. Before we continue, though, there's one very important point we need to make. Each state's motor vehicle code has variations in language and application with reference to the use of vehicles by volunteer emergency responders. During this presentation, we'll be making reference to motor vehicle codes and may offer some state-specific examples. We make reference to these examples so that you have some perspective of a specific point in the presentation. Please note that these examples may not be applicable to your particular part of the country. In fact, VFIS urges you and your organization to contact the authority having jurisdiction in your state. As an ESO, you need to confirm the laws and identify the regulations specific to your state's motor vehicle code as they pertain to the use of POVs when driving to emergency calls. While a specific point of law may vary from state to state, the overall general principles of this presentation should apply. The first thing you need to know is your POV an authorized emergency vehicle? Take a look at these pictures. Which one of these is an emergency vehicle? How about these two? Definitely the one on the right. And the one on the left? And these two? The one on the right is certainly an authorized emergency vehicle, but the one on the left may or may not be. In all three examples, you can't know for sure if the POV with a warning light is an authorized emergency vehicle unless you know what state that vehicle is licensed in. Surprised? Was your first instinct to say yes to all the personal vehicles that had warning lights? That's where a lot of folks get it wrong. And in getting it wrong, they could be setting themselves up for some very serious consequences. You see, here's the problem. Sometimes a firefighter or an EMT installs a warning light in their POV, and they presume that normal rules of the road don't apply to them. They flip on their warning light, put the pedal to the metal, and drive with the attitude that says, "Make way, people. Very important person needed at an emergency. I'm coming through." Whoa, hold on. Now, first of all, whether you're behind the wheel of an authorized emergency vehicle or not, you can't drive recklessly and possibly endanger other people. What you can and can't do as you drive to an incident is based entirely on whether or not your vehicle is considered an emergency vehicle, and it's different for every state. The first step to understanding the proper way to drive your POV is to understand your state motor vehicle laws. In some states, when you're issued the proper permit and equip your POV with a warning light and siren, your vehicle may be recognized as an emergency vehicle and not as a POV. Now, in this example, you must use the lights and siren properly, and you must be responding to an official call for service to be recognized as an emergency vehicle. Now, in Pennsylvania, the laws work like this.
Blue lights are permitted to be used by volunteer firefighters and volunteer ambulance personnel. These personnel using the lighting have to also follow provisions within the vehicle code. Some of those provisions are that the lighting has to be designated on one of their vehicles. They can use no more than 2 flashing or revolving lights. Also, the lighting has to be seen by 360 degrees. The lighting can also only be used when they're en route to an emergency call or a fire. And using the lighting does not allow them to exceed the speed limit, run through stop signs or red lights. The lighting is only allowing them to be recognized as a volunteer firefighter or ambulance personnel responding to an emergency.
Identification and visibility are the only reasons for using courtesy lights. What you need to really understand is this. Being a member of an ESO and responding to an emergency call does not grant you special privileges. In fact, as long as you're driving your POV with only a courtesy light or no warning lights at all, you're just another car on the road. It's that simple.
The Pennsylvania Motor Vehicle Code does allow the fire chief and the captain of the EMS company in particular to use emergency lighting and sirens on their personal vehicles. This allows them to be designated then as emergency vehicle.
Now here's something else to keep in mind. If you're driving your POV and it is not an emergency vehicle and you choose to ignore the law or you allow adrenaline to guide your driving decisions, you could risk a ticket or fines. Or worse, you could seriously injure or kill someone. Now if that happens, you could face very serious charges. And claiming you are a firefighter or an EMT on the way to a call may not be enough to protect you.
A volunteer who is allowed to operate their vehicle with the blue lighting could be charged with a misdemeanor from the Pennsylvania Vehicle Code if they are misrepresenting themselves as emergency personnel, also allowing someone else to use their vehicle with the blue lighting on, responding to an emergency whenever they're not designated to use that vehicle, or if they've been removed from the list of volunteers that is designated to the Pennsylvania State Police. Misrepresenting yourself as an emergency personnel rather than a volunteer personnel could result in a misdemeanor charge.
Now, before you settle back in your seat, fold your arms and think, our local cops won't ticket us. I'm safe. Think again, because there's more to it than that. Yeah, maybe you could avoid a ticket because of some perceived local professional courtesy. But if you get into an accident and injure or kill someone, there won't be likely much professional courtesy extended in the courtroom. If the evidence shows that you are violating the law, it may not matter whether you got a traffic ticket or not. Remember, POVs with courtesy lights do not have exemptions to the Motor Vehicle Code.
In Pennsylvania, if a volunteer firefighter or ambulance personnel is using a courtesy light on the way to a call and they're involved in an accident, there are numerous charges that could be brought against them for the violations of the Motor Vehicle Code. They're not exempt from any of the violations. They'd still get cited, for instance, if they run a red light or make an illegal pass, they would still be cited for that. If it's a serious accident involving injury or death, they'd still could be cited for homicide by vehicle or charges like that.
According to a USFA retrospective study, over half of all fatalities involved members of local volunteer fire and EMS agencies. Since most volunteer departments don't require personnel for duty shifts, members are allowed to drive directly to incidents from their homes or work. And what are they driving? Yep, their POV. Of firefighters killed en route to an incident, 85% were volunteers. Now, while we could show you incident after incident of POV crashes which caused injuries and deaths, what you really need to know is that there are some common factors. Some of the main contributing factors are driver error, excess relative speed, lack of seatbelt use. Of the motor vehicle collisions examined for the USFA study, only 21% of firefighters were wearing seatbelts. Rollovers. Now here, SUVs and 4x4s are a big problem. Intersections. Dangerous places for drivers in a hurry. According to VFIS, 45% of serious accidents occurred at intersections. Alcohol is another cause of POV-related fatalities. All right, we've made the point. You plus your POV plus unsafe driving could add up to disaster. That's the personal cost. Now let's look at the financial cost. If you're in your POV and you're injured on the way to a call, you'll probably be covered by some form of insurance. If the coverage comes from workers' comp or disability insurance, these generally only compensate you for a portion of your regular wages. Now how's that going to impact your family if you have to live on a reduced income for a while? Here are some more sobering thoughts to consider. Will your full-time employer be able to hold your position open for you while you recover? Or will your injuries prevent you from ever returning to your current job? Can you do without your vehicle while it's being repaired? Can you live without your driver's license for 30 days, 90 days, how about a year? And can you afford to pay for your traffic citation? In many states, a simple moving violation could set you back $150 to $200. And then there's the money you'll need for your legal defense.
If a volunteer firefighter or ambulance personnel is involved in an accident that causes injury or death to someone and a lawsuit arises, they can face civil and criminal charges as a result of that accident. Many times there's insurance coverage available to cover the civil aspect of that. However, most states do not allow insurance coverage for punitive damages, and usually there is no insurance coverage for criminal charges either.
And your accident wouldn't affect just your wallet. Accidents and injuries can cost money to your emergency service organization, from deductibles to uninsured losses, and could lead to higher insurance premiums, taking money away from being used for equipment and training. And then there's the damage control your organization would have to do when news got out that one of its members had done more harm than good. And how would you and your family feel with your name in the morning paper and your picture on the evening news, along with the description of the damage you've done? It's a lose-lose situation. Have you got the message? Driving your POV in an unsafe or illegal manner to an incident can have devastating personal and financial consequences. So, what can you do? First, talk to your chief or administrator about setting up a duty crew schedule. The duty crew would staff a station or an emergency vehicle for a set number of hours on a given day, reducing the number of POVs that would normally be on the road. That crew should be first on the scene of an emergency and determine at that point if additional support is necessary. Another option to consider is establishing staging areas along the normal routes of travel where members could meet and be picked up. This normally works best in communities where there are long travel distances. This would reduce the distance members would have to drive, as well as the number of vehicles on the road. If you're a chief officer or administrator, there are additional steps you can take to help reduce your organization's vehicle exposure. Routinely examine your member's driving record, or MVR. This will tell you if you've got any problem drivers on your hands. Next, verify your members have valid driver's licenses and personal auto insurance. This will help protect your agency from being dragged into a lawsuit if a member is involved in a crash while on a call. Conduct routine safety checks on your members' POVs to establish whether the vehicle is in safe operating order. This is important for two reasons. One, not all states require a state vehicle inspection. And two, as the chief of the department, you are the one responsible for accounting for members to install and use warning devices and courtesy lights. It could come back on you and the department if there's an accident and the POV or warning devices weren't in compliance. Now, to help you know what to look for, VFIS has developed a safety checklist for you to use. This form is not a mechanical inspection form. You won't be looking under the hood or the undercarriage, but you will be checking for the kind of things you'd check on your family car before going on vacation. Things like having the appropriate documents, including proof of personal insurance, good tire condition, lights that function properly, a functioning exhaust system, glass that's not damaged and provides clear vision, and necessary accessories like windshield wipers and a horn that works. If you're going to use your POV for emergency situations, you need to know and follow certain standard operating guidelines, or SOGs. Your agency should have these and enforce them. If they don't, use this list developed by VFIS and encourage your chief to draft a list for your station. Volunteers must obey their motor vehicle code with respect to driving to calls for service with courtesy lights. Develop SOGs that reflect the appropriate sections of your state's motor vehicle code, addressing how members should operate their POVs. All warning lights and installations should be approved by the chief of the department, and a written permit should be issued. The permit should accompany a copy of the rules of the road that apply. Procedures for at-the-scene parking and staging should be included in all SOGs. volunteers must have personal auto liability insurance with appropriate liability limits that protect the volunteer and the organization. Every member should have a copy of your department's SOGs and sign off that they've read them and understand them. Just as important, every department should have written enforcement and discipline guidelines for any member who violates procedures. Remember, it's your member's life or a member of the general public that's at stake. Finally, as an officer or administrator, you can also reduce exposure by providing defensive driver training. Here again, VFIS has produced a number of safe driving programs for emergency services that you can use. In your own defensive driving instruction course, you'll want to go over several basic concepts and hazards. Rate of closure. This concept is especially important when you're running warning or courtesy lights. Flashing lights often frighten other drivers or cause them to make unexpected moves that could lead to an accident. Proper rate of closure will allow others to see you and react safely. Following distance. Actual following distance is based on the speed and characteristics of your vehicle, the road and weather conditions. These numbers show you just how critical following distance and timing are. Wear a seatbelt. It's a fact. Wearing a seatbelt is often the difference between life and death. Drive at a safe speed. In recent studies, exceeding the posted speed limit was the most common error in fatal crashes. And as we saw earlier, speeding is also a major factor in POV-related fatalities. When changing lanes or turning, always signal ahead of time and don't speed up to pass the other car. Nighttime is the most dangerous time to be on the road. Traffic fatality rates are 3 to 4 times higher at night than they are during the day, so be extra cautious and follow posted speeds. Reduce your speed and increase the space between yourself and other vehicles. In inclement weather, avoid making any sudden moves and watch for ice patches, wet leaves, flooded roadways and bridges. They freeze before road surfaces do. Rollovers are another major problem, particularly with vehicles with higher centers of gravity, like SUVs and 4x4s. Just remember when driving them that they're more likely to roll over than other vehicles if you turn too fast. We've thrown a lot of material at you in this short presentation, so let's review the main ideas. Remember, when you drive to an emergency call in your POV with only a courtesy light, you are just another car on the road, no exemptions. POV accidents can cost you big time, in lost work time, in fines, in possible defense costs, in the loss of your car and your driver's license. It'll cost your department heavily too. Avoid having members use their POVs by establishing duty crews or set up staging areas for crews to meet en route to an incident. If you're a chief or administrator of your organization, make sure all your POV driving members have a safe driving record, have a driver's license and liability insurance, and drive a safe, fully operational vehicle. Help establish SOGs for members who drive their own vehicles. And here's the most important thing to remember. Drive defensively.
And I've been a volunteer firefighter for many years, and still when the pager goes off, the adrenaline kicks in and there's a tunnel vision that you just want to get to the scene and that's all you think about. It's important when you're responding to the scene to slow down, to take a deep breath and to think and actually consciously think, I have to slow down, I have to think about what I'm doing and relax on the way so that you can think clearly, both for when you arrive at the scene so that you're clear-headed, but also for driving there to make sure that you don't make mistakes because of the tunnel vision.
Right? Look, we like being in the emergency service. We like helping people. We like being able to save the day. And we like being the one to count on when there's an emergency situation. So be a hero. If you have to drive your POV to an emergency situation, follow the motor vehicle laws and get to and from the incident safely. Your family, your department, and VFIS thank you.